You wake in the small felt tent before the first light touches the sky, brought out of sleep by the deep, settled cold that always pools near the ground in the last hour of night. The air inside the tent holds a stillness so complete that your own breathing is the only movement, the only sound. For a few moments, you lie under the heavy woolen blanket, feeling the coarse fibers against your chin, listening to the quiet that seems to press in from all sides. Outside, the waystation waits without noise. There are no voices, no footsteps, only the immense silence of the steppe that surrounds the small collection of shelters like a vast, calm sea. You push the blanket aside slowly, feeling the cold immediately settle on your arms and neck, and sit up on the felt mattress that covers the packed earth floor. The dim interior reveals little, the curved wall of felt stretched over a wooden lattice, the small iron stove that has long since gone cold, a leather bucket of water near the entrance flap. You pull on your thick felt boots, the ones lined with wool that has matted into a firm, warm layer over many months of wear, and you tie the leather laces with fingers that still move stiffly from sleep. Your heavy coat, a deal of dark brown wool, hangs from a peg. You wrap it around yourself, cross the front panel over your chest, and fasten the cloth sash at your waist with a slow, practiced motion. Each part of this routine has happened so many times that your body performs it without thought, leaving your mind free to drift in the quiet grey of early morning. You step outside through the low doorway, ducking your head under the felt flap, and the world opens into wide, indefinite space. The sky is a deep charcoal color, darker overhead and lighter where it meets the land, and a faint band of paler gray sits along the eastern horizon, promising the sun but not yet delivering any warmth. The waystation consists of 3 small felt tents like yours, a larger wooden shelter with a flat roof, and a simple corral made of upright poles lashed together with rawhide, where several horses stand with their heads low, half asleep. Nothing moves except the faintest ripple of wind across the loose fibers of the tent felt, a barely visible shiver that makes no sound. As you stand there adjusting the collar of your coat, the station attendant emerges from the shelter without a greeting. He is an older man, his face lined and calm, his own coat faded to a soft brown by sun and dust. He carries a leather scroll case in both hands, holding it out to you with the quiet patience of someone who has performed this same handover countless times. The case is about the length of your forearm, made of thick, dark leather that has been oiled until it gleams faintly, and the seam where the 2 halves meet is sealed with a disc of hardened wax, the color of dried honey. Pressed into the wax is an impression of a seal, a small circular design that you do not study closely because it is not your task to read it, only to carry it. You take the case from his hands, feeling its weight settle into your palms. The leather is cool and smooth, and the cord that binds it lies flat in a single, tight loop. You nod once at the attendant, and he nods in return, and then he turns back toward the shelter to continue his own quiet work. With the scroll case in your hand, you walk to the corral where your horse waits. The animal lifts its head as you approach, ears turning forward, and lets out a soft breath that fogs in the cold air. You open the simple gate of poles, step inside, and run your hand along the horse's neck, feeling the coarse texture of the mane, the warmth that rises from the skin beneath. The horse is a sturdy gelding with a grey coat, its back broad and its legs thick, bred for distance and endurance rather than speed. You had chosen it the day before from the station's herd, and it has since accepted you with the calm indifference of a well-trained mount. You inspect the hooves first, lifting each foot in turn to check for stones or cracks, finding only the ordinary wear of travel over dry ground. Then you adjust the felt saddle pad that rests over the horse's back, smoothing out a small fold that had pressed into the wool, and you settle the wooden saddle frame on top of it, making sure the front arch sits just behind the shoulder blades. The saddle leather creaks softly as you pull the girth strap under the belly, tightening it in small increments until the saddle sits firm, but not tight. A rolled woolen blanket, wrapped in a piece of oiled cloth, sits behind the saddle, and you check the leather thongs that hold it in place, tugging each one to confirm that nothing is loosened during the night. You lead the horse out of the corral, your boots pressing into the dry dirt that is still cold from the night, and you stop by the leather bucket that sits near your tent. You fill your water skin, a goatskin bag with a wooden stopper, dipping it into the cool water and watching the bubbles rise as the skin fills. The water smells faintly of leather and clean earth. You pack your provisions next, items that the station attendant had left for you, a small cloth bag of dried curd, each piece hard and pale and tasting sharply of salt, a strip of dried mutton as long as your hand, dark and stiff, and a separate pouch of crushed millet flour, the grains so fine they feel like dust between your fingers. You place these into a leather saddlebag that hangs from the rear of the saddle, arranging them so that they will not shift as the horse moves, and then you secure the flap with a bone toggle. The sky has lightened while you worked, shifting from charcoal to a soft grey, and now a pale amber glow is spreading along the eastern edge of the world. The first colours begin to appear in the landscape, the brown-green of the grass, the dark tan of the earth, the muted yellow of the felt tents behind you. You take the scroll case and tie it securely to the saddle, using the same leather cord that the attendant had tied, threading it through a small iron ring on the saddle frame, so that the case lies flat against your hip when you mount. You check the knot, pull it once to test its hold, and then you place your left foot into the stirrup and swing up onto the horse's back with a single steady motion. From the saddle, the world changes slightly. The horizon feels farther away, and the grassland seems to stretch out more completely in all directions. You settle into the seat, adjusting your position until the bones of your pelvis find the natural hollow of the saddle, and you let your legs hang loosely, the stirrup supporting only the balls of your feet. The horse shifts its weight beneath you and you feel the small movements of its muscles through the leather and felt. You gather the reins, a single long strip of braided rawhide that runs through a ring on the bridle, and you hold it with a light grip, your left hand resting on the front of the saddle. You squeeze your legs gently, and the horse walks forward, leaving the waystation behind. The sound of hooves on dry earth is a steady, unhurried beat. 4 soft floods that repeat without variation. You do not look back, there is no one to wave to, no reason to delay. Ahead of you, the grassland opens into a plain so wide and empty that it seems to swallow direction. There is no road, no track, no signpost. There is only the faint memory of hoof prints in the dirt, visible here and there where the grass is thinner, faint depressions left by other riders who passed this way days or weeks ago. You align yourself with these traces and with the pale disk of the sun that is now just starting to lift free of the horizon, a white gold coin balanced on the dark line of the earth. The morning air is still cold enough to make your cheeks feel tight, but the wool of your coat holds the warmth of your body close. You pull your felt hat lower on your forehead, its wide brim shading your eyes from the low sun, and you let your gaze relax into the middle distance. The grass around you is short, no higher than the horse's fetlocks, a mix of pale brown stalks and patches of dusty green where a little moisture lingers in the soil. As the horse walks, its legs push through the vegetation with a soft continuous hiss, a sound so quiet and steady that after a few minutes you stop noticing it except when you deliberately listen. The air carries a clean, dry scent, like old hay and sun-warmed earth, with just a trace of something sharper, a faint herb-like bitterness from a plant you cannot identify. You settle into the rhythm of the ride, a slow, patient motion that your body already knows. The horse's shoulders sway from side to side with each step, a gentle rocking that moves your hips and spine in a regular cycle. You feel the slight forward and back slide of the saddle, the soft bump of the rolled blanket against your lower back, the occasional chink of the iron bit ring against the bridle when the horse tosses its head to clear a fly that has not yet appeared. The sun climbs higher, and the shadows of the grass stems shorten minute by minute. The land around you never changes. It continues in every direction as an unbroken carpet of brown-green stalks that tremble in the breeze, and the horizon remains always at the same distance, a thin line where the pale blue of the sky meets the tan of the earth. No trees interrupt the view, no hills, no rocks larger than a fist. The emptiness is so complete that the movement of a single cloud shadow passing over the grass becomes a noticeable event, a dark shape that travels slowly across the plain like a silent ship. You notice the small details of the landscape as they pass. A patch of slightly taller grass, its seed heads nodding under their own weight. A scatter of small dry droppings that tell of a hare that passed this way in the night. An insect, pale and slow, climbing a stalk and then disappearing as the stalk bends under its weight. A distant bird that appears as a dark fleck against the sky, hangs for a moment, and then drops out of sight into the grass. These things register without demanding your attention. They are part of the great quiet that fills the steppe. A quiet so deep that you can hear your own pulse if you listen for it. A soft, faraway thump in your ears. The horse walks on without needing guidance, following the faint line of direction you set at the start. Its ears move constantly, turning to catch sounds you cannot hear, then relaxing again. You feel the warmth of its body through the saddle. A steady heat that rises from the broad back and mixes with the increasing warmth of the sun. The wool of your coat begins to feel heavy, and you loosen the sash at your waist slightly to let a little air circulate. Your hands remain still on the reins. There is no need to pull or steer because the horse knows this work as well as you do. It is a gelding that has traveled these routes many times, carrying messengers across the same open ground, and it has settled into the same calm patience that you carry. Time passes without measure. The sun climbs to a higher angle, and the light grows brighter, losing its amber color and becoming a clear, pale gold. The shadows shorten to small dark pools at the base of each grass clump. The breeze, which had been intermittent, settles into a steady, gentle current from the north, cool enough to keep you comfortable, but not strong enough to disturb the horse. You feel the air move across the side of your face, and you turn slightly to let it cool the other side as well. The saddle leather squeaks softly with each step, a rhythmic little sound that blends with the hoofbeats and the hiss of the grass. You notice that you have begun to count these sounds without meaning to, grouping them into sets of 4 or 8, letting the numbers dissolve into the background of your awareness. There is no urgency, no destination in sight, no change to anticipate. The world is reduced to the gentle motion of the horse, the endless grass, the wide pale sky, and the quiet task of carrying a sealed scroll across the plain. At some point, you notice that the sun has moved noticeably across the sky, and you realize that a good portion of the morning has passed. You feel no hunger yet, only a mild thirst that you will attend to later. The horse walks at the same steady pace, its breathing deep and even, its hooves falling in a pattern that has become as familiar as your own heartbeat. You shift your weight slightly, adjusting the angle of your hips, and feel the scroll case press gently against your thigh, a reminder of the purpose that carries you forward. You do not think about what the scroll contains. It is not your concern. Your concern is only the next step, the next breath, the next faint smudge on the horizon that might indicate a change in the land. For now, there is no smudge, no change, only the grassland continuing as it has since you mounted, and you let yourself dissolve into its stillness, a small moving point in an enormous calm world. The morning deepens around you with a silence so complete that the smallest sounds take on a distinct shape. The sound of the hooves pressing into dry earth is a steady, muffled beat that never changes its rhythm. 4 soft notes repeating in a cycle that your mind has already learned to ignore. The occasional chink of the iron bit ring comes at irregular intervals, a tiny bright noise that appears and vanishes without pattern, leaving no trace in the quiet air. These 2 sounds, the hoofbeats and the chink, are the only companions to the long, slow breath of the horse and the distant whisper of the wind through the grass. The sun climbs slowly, a pale white coin in a huge, dusty blue sky, unmarked by any cloud. Its light is cool and thin at first, spreading across the plain without heat, merely outlining the seed heads and the fine edges of the grass blades. You watch the shadow of your horse stretch out to the left, a dark shape that glides over the uneven ground, its legs elongating and shortening with each step, its head bobbing gently. The shadow is the only thing that seems to move with purpose across the enormous stillness. Everything else is fixed in place, as if the whole world has been set down carefully and left undisturbed. You feel the sway of the horse's shoulders beneath you, a gentle side-to-side motion that never varies. The movement travels up through the saddle, into your hips and lower back, and you let your body soften into it, allowing the muscles along your spine to loosen one by one. The saddle leather creaks with a sound like a quiet voice murmuring a single repeated syllable, and the rolled blanket behind you nudges your lower back in a slow, regular pattern. You rest your left hand on the front of the saddle, the reins looped loosely around your fingers, and your right hand lies on your thigh, palm down, feeling the warmth of the wool coat that the sun has just begun to touch. The grass stretches out to a horizon that always stays the same distance away, a faint line where tan earth meets pale sky. It is a line so thin and straight that it might have been drawn with a ruler and then blurred by a soft eraser. You lift your gaze to that line and hold it there for a while, letting your focus soften until the horizon seems to shimmer slightly, a trick of the light or of your own tired eyes. The wind stirs the seed heads in a long, whispering wave that begins far to the north and rolls toward you, each stalk bending and then straightening in a fluid sequence. When the wave passes under the horse's belly, you feel a momentary coolness and catch the clean scent of dried vegetation, a smell like old hay stored in a wooden loft. A distant marmot stands upright on its hind legs, its small round body visible as a dark dot against the pale grass. It watches you pass with a stillness that matches your own, its front paws tucked against its chest. For a long moment, you and the marmot are the only two upright creatures in the entire plain, regarding each other across a great distance. Then it drops to all fours and disappears into a burrow that you cannot see, leaving behind no sign that it was ever there. After that, the land returns to its unbroken stillness. The space where the marmot stood, now just another patch of grass identical to all the others. You adjust the felt hat on your head, pushing it down slightly so the brim shades your eyes more completely. The wool of the hat is warm against your forehead, and you feel the sun begin to warm the wool of your deal as well. A gentle heat that soaks into the fibers and gradually reaches your shoulders. The cold of early morning has entirely gone now, replaced by a mild, dry warmth that makes the air feel light in your lungs. You take a deeper breath, holding it for a moment, then let it out slowly through your nose. The horse maintains a steady walking pace that you could hold for hours without tiring. There is no need to urge it forward or to hold it back. It moves with the settled rhythm of an animal that has done this same journey many times and expects nothing different today. Its head nods slightly with each step, ears swiveling to catch sounds that you cannot perceive, then relaxing again. The coarse grey hairs of its mane lift and settle in the breeze, and you notice a small patch of lighter hair near the withers, a scar perhaps, or just a quirk of colouring. You note it without thinking, the way you note the shape of a cloud, and then your attention drifts elsewhere. Each breath of the horse rises and falls like a slow bellows, the ribs expanding against your calves and then contracting in a long sigh. You feel this motion through the leather of your boots, a steady pressure that comes and goes, and after a while you begin to count the breaths without intending to, matching them to the count of hoofbeats. 4 steps to an inhale, 4 steps to an exhale, the numbers linking together into a chain that stretches out behind you and ahead of you into the day. The counting requires no effort, and the numbers soon dissolve into the emptiness, leaving only the sensation of the rhythm itself. You also catch the soft squeak of the saddle leather and begin to group those squeaks into sets of 10, letting each set end and a new one begin without holding on to the total. By the time you reach the 5th or 6th set, the numbers have blurred into a background hum, and you realize that you are no longer counting at all, but simply existing inside the sound. This seems to happen often when you ride alone across long distances. The mind sheds its habits one by one until only the bare awareness of motion and light remains. The sun climbs higher, and its color shifts from pale white to a very faint gold, as though a thin wash of honey has been brushed across the sky. The blue deepens slightly overhead, while staying dusty and soft near the horizons, where a thin layer of haze blurs the meeting of earth and air. You feel the heat now on the back of your neck, a prickling warmth that makes you loosen the collar of your coat just enough to let a breath of air slide down your spine. The horse's coat has started to shine faintly along the flanks, a slight dampness that evaporates as quickly as it forms. Your mind wanders to simple things. You remember the taste of the dried curd you ate before setting out, its sharp saltiness, the way it crumbled into powder between your teeth. You think about the water skin hanging from the saddle, the weight of it, the coolness of the water inside that you will taste when you stop. You consider the distance you have traveled, though you have no way to measure it precisely. You estimate by the angle of the sun, by the feel of your own body, by the subtle change in the quality of the grass. These thoughts drift through you without urgency, without forming conclusions, each one giving way to the next, like one blade of grass bending after another in the wind. A small flock of birds crosses the sky very high up, tiny dark specks moving in a loose cluster. They make no sound that reaches you, and they pass from east to west in a slow, deliberate drift, their formations stretching and contracting as though pulled by invisible threads. You watch them until they shrink to dots, and then to nothing, swallowed by the distance. The sky above you is empty again, a huge pale dome under which you are a single moving speck, no more significant than the birds or the marmot. The terrain beneath the horses' hooves shifts subtly. The soil, which had been a compacted tan, now shows a slightly redder hue, as though some mineral in the earth has changed. The grass here grows in tighter clumps with more bare ground between them, and the seed heads are a lighter brown, almost silver, when the wind lifts them. You notice these changes without assigning them any meaning. They are simply variations in the vast sameness, like the different threads in a length of undyed wool. You lean forward slightly and run your hand along the horse's neck, feeling the warmth and the rough texture of the hairs. The horse does not react except to flick one ear back toward you for a moment, checking your intention, then returning its attention to the path ahead. You pat the neck twice, a light touch with your flat palm, and then sit back again. The scroll case shifts against your hip as you move, a solid presence that you have grown so accustomed to that you only notice it when it presses at a new angle. Time passes in a manner that is difficult to describe. It does not drag, nor does it hurry. It simply unfolds, like the grass unfolding beneath the horse's hooves. You become aware that you have ridden through the full morning and that the sun is now approaching its highest point, though it will not be directly overhead for another hour or more. The shadows are very short now, mere dark pools at the base of each grass clump, and the light has taken on a flat, even quality that makes distances hard to judge. You could be 10 paces from a slight rise in the ground, or 100. The lack of reference points makes everything seem equally near and equally far. You feel a mild thirst now, a dryness at the back of your throat that reminds you to drink. But the river you expect to reach is still some distance ahead, so you hold off, knowing that the water in your skin will taste better when you are truly ready for it. Instead, you swallow the saliva that remains in your mouth, moisten your lips with your tongue, and return your attention to the horizon. The wind, which had been a steady, gentle current from the north, now drops almost completely. In the sudden stillness, the sounds of your passage become louder, the creak of the saddle, the soft grind of the girth strap, the whisper of your coat against the cantle, the horse's breath moving in and out, in and out. You can also hear, very faintly, a sound like the ticking of tiny insects in the grass, a high, dry clicking that seems to come from everywhere at once. You listen to it for a while, and then the wind returns, softer than before, and the ticking fades. A shape appears on the horizon ahead, something darker than the grass and taller than the seed heads. You watch it grow slowly as you approach, and eventually you identify it as a single large rock, half buried in the earth, its surface weathered into smooth grey curves. Patches of pale lichen spread across its surface in irregular shapes, and a few tufts of grass grow from a crack near the top. You pass the rock on your left, close enough to reach out and touch it if you wanted to, but you do not. It is just a rock, and it slides past you and then falls behind, and soon it is just another dark speck on the plain, indistinguishable from the marmots or the birds. You check the position of the sun again, and confirm that you are still moving in the right direction. The scroll case shifts once more, and you adjust it without thinking, retying the cord with a simple knot that your fingers perform from memory. The horse continues to walk, its pace unchanged, its head now held a fraction lower than before, perhaps feeling the midday warmth. You let the reins go slack, trusting the animal to keep the course, and you fold your hands together on the pommel, fingers interlaced. The sky remains cloudless, an enormous empty bowl of pale blue that arches from horizon to horizon without interruption. The light is so even that your own shadow has almost disappeared, reduced to a small dark patch directly under the horse's belly. You have the sensation of floating above the ground, of being suspended in a vast bright space where up and down have lost their usual meaning. This sensation is not unpleasant. It is simply another aspect of the long, quiet ride, something that comes and goes like the wind. You let your eyes close for a count of 10, feeling the motion of the horse more acutely without sight, the sway of the shoulders, the gentle forward surge of each step, the slight lateral shift when the horse adjusts its footing. When you open your eyes again, nothing has changed. The grass is still there, the horizon, the pale sky. It is as though you have not moved at all, as though the entire plain has been moving with you, perfectly synchronized. After a while you notice a very faint line of green in the distance, a smudge so subtle that you are not sure it is really there. You watch it carefully as you ride, and over the course of many minutes it grows slightly more distinct, a thin ribbon of darker color stretched across the plain. You know that this is the river you have been expecting, the first real landmark since you left the waystation. It is still far away, many hours distant, but its presence on the horizon is a quiet confirmation that you are on course and that the day is unfolding exactly as it should. You do not quicken your pace. You do not feel any urgency. The river will be there when you arrive, and until then there is only the steady walking of the horse, the sigh of the grass, and the gentle turning of the earth under the pale white sun. You return your gaze to the middle distance and let your thoughts settle once more into the rhythm of the ride. The horse's ears twitch, the saddle leather creaks, and the numbers that you were counting earlier have long since faded into the deep quiet that fills the steppe. You are simply riding, and the morning continues around you, slow and calm and without end. The first sign of water is a line of low willow scrub appearing far ahead, a faint grey-green smudge that lifts just slightly above the grass. It emerges so gradually that for a long while you are not certain whether it is a real feature or a shadow cast by a cloud that has already dissolved. You watch it as you ride, noting how it refuses to disappear when the wind shifts or the light changes, how it slowly acquires texture and weight. By the time the sun is directly overhead, the smudge has resolved into a thin band of brush, the tops of the willows rounded and dusty, their leaves a soft sage color that looks cool even from a distance. The horse senses the water before you see any glint of it. Its ears push forward and its pace quickens by a fraction, the hooves landing with a slightly more eager beat. You let it have its head, keeping the reins loose, and the animal follows the invisible scent that rises from the damp earth and threads through the dry grass. The brush grows taller as you approach, and beneath the willows you begin to see the darker green of sedges and the pale brown of exposed soil. Then, as the last rise of the bank gives way, you see the river itself. It is no wider than a horse's length, a shallow braid of clear brown water moving over a bed of rounded stones. The surface catches the noon light and scatters it into 1,000 shifting points of brightness, a continuous flicker that plays across the underside of the willow leaves. The water does not rush or roar. It makes only a soft, steady sound, a blend of gentle plashing and a low liquid murmur that seems to come from the stones themselves. Small ripples form where the current divides around larger rocks, then smooth out again a few handspans downstream. The whole river gives the impression of moving without any hurry, as though it has all the time in the world to reach wherever it is going. You ride up to the edge of the bank and stop. The horse lowers its head and blows a soft breath through its nostrils, stirring the surface of the water. You swing your right leg back over the saddle and dismount, your boots landing on the bare, packed earth of the bank with a solid thud. Your legs feel the change immediately, the sudden pressure of your full weight after hours of being supported by the horse, and you stand still for a moment, letting the muscles in your thighs and calves settle into this new arrangement. You lead the horse forward until its front hooves are on the wet gravel at the water's edge. Then you let the reins fall to the ground. The horse lowers its muzzle to the river and begins to drink, the water entering its mouth with small sucking sounds, its throat moving in a slow, regular swallow. You watch the surface of the water dimple where the lips touch it, watch the tiny rings expand and vanish. The horse drinks for a long time, pausing now and then to lift its head and let a thin stream of water drip from its chin, then lowering it again for more. You leave the horse to its drinking and walk a few steps downstream. Squatting by the edge, you unstop your water skin and lower it into the current, feeling the cool pressure of the water push against the leather. Bubbles rise from the opening in a silvery chain, and when the skin is full and heavy, you lift it out and set the wooden stopper firmly in place. The outside of the skin is wet now and pleasantly cool against your palm. You splash a little water onto your face, cupping it in your hands and pressing it to your forehead and cheeks, feeling the dust and the salt of dried sweat wash away. The water is colder than you expected, and it leaves your skin feeling tight and clean. You stand and walk back to a flat patch of ground near the willows, where a low root forms a natural seat. You sit down, your back against the trunk of the oldest willow, its bark rough and deeply grooved. From the saddlebag you take out a piece of dried curd, a hard, pale chunk about the size of your thumb. You place it in your mouth and let it soften, the sharp saltiness spreading slowly across your tongue. It takes a long time to chew, and you work at it patiently, feeling the texture change from rock-like to crumbly to a soft paste. You swallow and take another piece, and then you break off a small corner of the dried mutton, its dark fibers stringy and intensely savory. The food sits in your stomach with a quiet solidity, and you wash it down with a long drink from the water skin, the cool water tasting faintly of the leather and of the river. The heat of midday presses down around you, a weight that seems to come from all sides. The air shimmers just above the grass on the far bank, a visible quivering that makes the plain beyond look as though it is underwater. The willows cast a thin, dappled shade, their narrow leaves filtering the light into shifting patterns that move across your legs and hands. Insects drift past with a low, steady hum, one or two at a time, their transparent wings catching the sun in brief flashes. A dragonfly with a blue-green body hovers over the water, darts sideways, hovers again, and then vanishes upstream. You close your eyes for a short while, not to sleep but simply to rest them from the brightness. The darkness behind your eyelids is a warm reddish-brown, and you feel the faint coolness that rises from the damp earth along the river's edge, a narrow zone of lower temperature that clings to the bank. The sound of the river fills your ears completely, the gurgle of water slipping between stones, the occasional plop of a small insect landing on the surface, the distant chuckle of a faster riffle somewhere upstream. Underneath all of these is the deeper silence of the grassland, which waits just beyond the willow scrub, holding its breath through the hottest part of the day. After a time you open your eyes again. The light has not changed, and the heat has not eased. The horse has finished drinking and now stands with its head low, one hind leg cocked, its lower lip hanging loose and its eyes half closed. A few flies circle its flanks, and its tail swishes lazily from side to side, the long hairs stirring the air with a soft whoosh. You watch the horse doze in its standing sleep, a trick that horses have mastered over thousands of years, and you feel a kinship with the animal's quiet patience. You shift your position on the route, leaning your head back against the bark and letting your gaze travel along the line of the river. Upstream, the willows grow thicker, their branches interlacing to form a continuous grey-green tunnel over the water. Downstream, the river widens slightly into a pool, the surface smooth and dark, reflecting the pale blue of the sky with such fidelity that the reflection seems more real than the sky itself. A water strider skates across the pool, its feet dimpling the surface without breaking it, leaving small circular shadows on the sandy bottom. The heat makes your thoughts slow and scattered. You think about the willow trees, how their roots must reach deep into the ground to find the water table, how they manage to survive in this dry place where nothing else grows taller than your knee. You think about the stones in the riverbed, rounded by centuries of rolling, each one once part of a larger rock somewhere far upstream. You think about the scroll in its leather case, still tied to your saddle, still sealed, still carrying whatever words it contains toward their destination. These thoughts are not connected in any logical way. They simply appear and then recede, like the ripples on the water. After a while, you eat another piece of dried curd, this time dipping it briefly in the river to soften it. The water makes the outside slightly gummy, and when you bite into it, the texture is different, less dusty. You chew slowly, watching a small brown bird hop among the willow branches, pecking at something invisible to you. The bird makes a thin, high call, 3 descending notes that repeat twice, and then it flies away across the river, its wings beating fast and then gliding, beating and gliding. You feel the rest beginning to work in your body. The stiffness that had settled into your lower back and hips during the long morning ride has loosened, and your legs feel ready to sit the saddle again. The mild thirst that had been with you for the last hour is now fully gone, replaced by a sense of comfortable fullness. The sun is still high, and there is no need to hurry, but you also know that the day is long, and that the next way station, though not close, is a fixed distance that must be covered before dark. So you rise from your seat under the willow, brushing a few dry leaves from your coat, and walk back to the horse. The gelding opens its eyes fully as you approach and shifts its weight onto all 4 legs. You run your hand along its neck, feeling the warmth of the sun stored in the grey hairs, and then you check the girth strap, tightening it by 1 notch. The saddle has held its position well, and the blanket beneath it is only slightly damp. You untie the water skin and secure it again, making sure the stopper is tight, and you check the scroll case by pressing it flat against your thigh and tugging the cord. Everything is as it should be. You lead the horse to the shallowest part of the river, where the gravel forms a low bar just below the surface, and the water is no deeper than the horse's fetlocks. You mount from the bank, swinging up with a smooth motion that your body remembers perfectly, and you settle into the saddle as the horse steps forward into the current. The water splashes softly around the horse's hooves, a sound like a handful of pebbles dropped into a pool. Each step sends small waves spreading outward, disturbing the smooth flow for a moment before the river resumes its steady downstream movement. The horse walks carefully, picking its way among the stones, and you can feel the slight unevenness of the footing through the saddle. The coolness of the water rises briefly around your boots before the horse climbs the far bank and steps onto dry land. You stop for a moment and look back. The river is already resuming its quiet life, the ripples you made smoothing out, the reflections of the willows steadying on the surface. From this side, the crossing looks exactly as it did from the other side, a shallow brown stream moving patiently through the flat plain, shaded by dusty willows, utterly indifferent to your passage. The horse shakes its head once, making the bit rings jingle, and then stands still, waiting for your signal. The grassland on the far side looks exactly the same as the one you left behind. The same short brown-green stalks stretch away to a horizon that is indistinguishable from the previous horizon. The same pale sky arches overhead, and the same faint breeze stirs the seed heads into a slow, continuous wave. If you did not know that you had crossed a river, you would have no evidence of it. The water is hidden now behind the screen of willows, and the sound of its flow has already faded into the general quiet. You are once again a single point in an enormous open space, surrounded by grass and sky and nothing else. You squeeze your legs gently, and the horse walks forward into the new plain. The hoofbeats resume their steady rhythm, soft and muffled on the dry earth, and the saddle leather picks up its familiar creak. The sun, now past its highest point, has begun its long, slow descent toward the west, though it will be many hours before any change in the light becomes noticeable. The heat continues, but it is a dry, manageable heat, and the memory of the cool river water stays on your face and in your throat, a small reservoir of comfort that you carry with you. You look ahead and see the same endless spread of grass, the same distant line where tan meets pale blue, the same absence of any feature that might serve as a marker. You trust the direction you set when you cross the river, aligning yourself with the position of the sun and with the faint sense of orientation that long travel imprints on the body. The horse seems to share this sense. It walks without hesitation, its ears pointed forward, its stride even and unhurried. After a while you notice that the character of the grass has shifted in small ways. The stalks here are slightly thinner, the seed heads a little paler, and the spaces between the clumps are wider, revealing more of the pale, cracked soil. Tiny white flowers, no larger than a pinhead dot, the ground in scattered patches, and when the horse steps among them, a faint sweet scent rises, so faint that you can only catch it for a moment before the wind carries it away. These minor variations in the endless sameness register without demanding your attention. They are simply the texture of the ride, the fine grain of the world through which you move. Your mind drifts back to the river crossing, replaying the sensation of the cool water on your face, the taste of the softened curd, the sound of the horse drinking. These memories are pleasant and calm, and they accompany you like a silent song as you ride deeper into the afternoon. You feel no loneliness, though you are entirely alone. The presence of the horse, the weight of the scroll case, and the steady rhythm of the journey are enough. There is a peculiar completeness to this kind of travel, a sense that nothing is missing and nothing needs to be added. The sun inches westward, and the light begins to take on the faintest golden tint. Your shadow, which had been huddled under the horse's belly, now stretches out to the right, a long thin shape that flows over the grass and the bare patches of earth. You watch it for a while, noticing how the horse's legs become impossibly long in the shadow, how the rider on the shadow horse sits motionless, a dark silhouette that mimics your every move but makes no sound of its own. The shadow world and the real world ride side by side, separated only by the angle of the light. You take another drink from the water skin, the water still cool from its time in the river. The leather of the skin is damp against your lips, and you drink sparingly, knowing that the next water source is many hours away. You replace the stopper carefully and hang the skin back on its hook, then wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. The horse continues to walk, its breathing deep and steady, and you feel the warmth of its body through the saddle, a constant presence that is as reassuring as a hearth fire. The afternoon stretches on in this way, slow and unvaried, a long, peaceful passage through a landscape that asks nothing of you. You do not count the hours, you do not measure the distance in any precise way. You simply ride, letting the motion of the horse and the vast quiet of the grassland fill your awareness. The river is behind you now, already part of the past, and the next landmark is somewhere ahead, still invisible, still only a concept. Between these two fixed points, there is nothing but the grass, the sky, the steady walking of the horse, and the quiet knowledge that you are exactly where you need to be. The afternoon light is thick and golden when you first see the low wooden frame for Yam Station rising from the plain, a shape so subtle at first that it might be only a cluster of darker grass or a trick of heat shimmer. You watch it as you ride, and over the course of many slow minutes, it resolves into something human-made, a simple square enclosure of upright poles driven into the earth, with a felt-roofed shelter built against one side and a corral holding several horses standing still as statues. There is no smoke, no banner, no sign other than its own quiet presence, yet you know it instantly for what it is, a place of rest and exchange set precisely at the distance a horse can travel before tiring. The station sits in the middle of the plain without any apparent reason for being there. No water source visible, no hill or valley to mark it as special. It exists purely because the network of messengers requires it, a fixed point in the immense moving emptiness. As you draw nearer, you can make out more details. The way the felt roofing has been patched in one corner with a lighter piece of wool. The lean of one fence post that has shifted slightly with the frosts. The dark opening of the doorway that reveals nothing of the interior. A few pieces of gear hang from pegs on the outside of the shelter, a leather bucket, a coil of rope, a spare bridle with the iron bit catching the sun in small bright flashes. You ride toward it slowly, not quickening your pace because the station is not going anywhere, and your horse still has strength in its legs. The animal seems to recognize the shape as well. Its ears prick forward with a mild interest that is entirely calm, the same interest it might show for a patch of taller grass or a familiar scent on the wind. The distance between you and the station closes at the same steady walking pace you have kept all day, and as you approach, you see a man emerge from the dim interior of the shelter and stand in the open gateway, waiting. He does not wave or call out. He simply stands with his hands at his sides, A figure in a heavy felt coat much like your own, its original brown faded by sun and dust to a soft tan that matches the earth under his boots. His face is lined in the way that all station keepers' faces are lined, from squinting into long distances and from the dry wind that never quite stops. He watches your approach with the quiet patience of someone who has performed this same act of waiting many hundreds of times, and there is no urgency in his posture, no expectation of speed. When you are close enough to see the details of his face, you draw the horse to a halt just outside the enclosure. For a moment you both remain still, you on horseback and he on the ground, and the only sound is the soft chuff of your horse clearing its nostrils and the distant hiss of the wind through the grass. Then the station master steps forward and takes the reins from your hand without speaking, already expecting you. His grip on the leather is firm and practiced, and he turns immediately to lead your tired horse toward the corral, leaving you to dismount on your own. You swing your right leg back over the saddle, and as you slide down, your boots hit the packed earth with a solid thud that travels up through your knees. Your legs feel the change at once, the sudden return of your full weight after hours of being carried. You stand still for a moment, letting the muscles in your thighs and hips adjust, feeling the slight burn that comes from long sitting. Then you walk, a little stiffly, toward the shelter. The station master has already led your horse into the corral and is now leading a fresh horse out, a bay mare with a calm eye and a coat that smells of dust and sun-warmed hair. The mare walks with the same unhurried stride as the gelding, her head low, her ears relaxed. The station master ties her to a horizontal pole near the shelter and then turns to you, nodding once, a simple acknowledgement that says everything that needs to be said. The horse is ready, the station is open, you are welcome to rest. You sit on a wooden bench that stands under the overhang of the felt roof, a simple seat made from a split log, its surface worn smooth by the passage of many riders before you. The shade is thin but welcome, dropping the temperature by just enough to notice. The station master disappears into the dark interior of the shelter and returns a moment later carrying a simple clay bowl, its rim chipped in one place, filled with a watery salted tea that steams very faintly in the cool shadow. He hands it to you without ceremony, and you accept it with both hands, feeling the warmth spread through the rough clay into your palms. You lift the bowl to your lips and drink. The tea tastes of salt and of something faintly smoky, perhaps from the stove where the water was boiled, perhaps from the very walls of the shelter. It is neither hot nor cold, just warm enough to be pleasant, and it slides down your throat with a gentle, soothing quality. You drink slowly, taking small sips, letting the liquid settle in your stomach where the dried mutton and curd from the river crossing still sit. The station master watches you for a moment, then turns to the fresh horse and begins checking its hooves, lifting each foot in turn and inspecting the frog and the shoe, his movements unhurried and precise. While you drink, you take in the details of the station. The shelter is small, large enough for perhaps 2 people to sleep side by side, its floor covered with old felt that has been patched many times. A tiny iron stove sits in the center, its chimney pipe rising through a hole in the roof, and a small pile of dried dung chips waits next to it for the evening fire. The walls are lined with a few simple items: a spare water skin, a coil of braided rawhide, a wooden ladle, a felt bag that probably contains grain or tea. Everything is tidy and worn, each object holding the patina of long use. You finish the tea and set the bowl on the bench beside you. From the saddlebag you take the small pouch of crushed millet flour and you pour a little of it into your palm, then add a splash of water from your water skin to make a thin paste. You eat this slowly, using your finger to scoop the paste into your mouth, tasting the mild, earthy flavor of the grain. It is not a meal so much as a sustenance, a quiet filling that will carry you through the remaining hours of daylight. The station master finishes with the hooves, and now runs his hand along the mare's back, checking for any soreness or swelling, finding none. There is no need for long words between you and the station master. A nod acknowledges the horse, a quiet phrase confirms the direction you are heading, and that is the extent of your exchange. He knows where you've come from by the dust on your coat and the look of your tired horse, He knows where you are going by the simple fact that there is only one route through this station, one line of travel that runs east to west across the plain. Any information beyond this would be unnecessary, a breach of the unspoken code of silence that governs these remote places. You rise from the bench and walk to the mare. You untie the scroll case from the tired gelding's saddle, feeling the familiar weight of the leather cylinder in your hands, the smoothness of the wax seal still intact. You carry it to the fresh horse and set it aside for a moment while you transfer the saddle. The station master helps you without being asked, lifting the saddle from the gelding while you unbuckle the girth, and together you carry it to the mare and set it gently on her back. The felt saddle pad goes first, smooth flat over the warm coat, and then the wooden frame settles into place. You tighten the girth in small increments, checking the mare's reaction, making sure the strap sits in the natural groove behind her elbows. The rolled woolen blanket follows, tied securely with the leather thongs, and then the saddlebag with its remaining provisions. The scroll case you attach last, threading the cord through the iron ring on the saddle frame, and tying the same simple knot that you have tied so many times before. You tug the cord once to test its hold, and then you press the case flat against the mare's flank, where it will ride just behind your leg. The station master watches this process with the same calm attention he gave to the hose, and when you are finished, he steps back and nods again, satisfied. You take a moment to pat the gelding on the neck, a brief gesture of thanks for the steady ride it gave you through the morning and early afternoon. The gelding accepts the touch with a low blink, then turns its attention to a patch of hay that the station master has placed in the corral. It will rest here for a day or two, eating and drinking, until another messenger comes from the opposite direction and claims it for the return journey. This is the rhythm of the yam system, an endless cycling of horses and riders across the vast network of stations, each animal serving many journeys, each rider only a temporary custodian. You mount the bay mare with the same smooth motion you have used all day, your left foot finding the stirrup and your body swinging up without hesitation. The mare stands steady, her ears flicking once at the new weight, and then she settles, waiting for your signal. The saddle feels slightly different from the gelding's, the angle of the seat a little narrower, the creak of the leather a slightly higher pitch. You adjust your position until you find the natural balance, your hips settling into the hollow, your legs hanging loosely with the stirrups supporting the balls of your feet. The station master has already turned back toward the shelter. He does not watch you leave. His role in your journey is complete, and his attention has shifted to the next task, perhaps mending a strap or boiling more water for tea. The enclosure, the shelter, the corral with its resting horses, all of these sit quietly in the golden afternoon light as you walk the mare out through the gateway and onto the open plain. You do not look back. There is a custom among messengers, not a spoken rule but an understood practice, that you do not look back at the stations you leave. Looking back might imply hesitation or regret, and there is no room for either in this work. So you fix your eyes on the horizon ahead and let the station shrink behind you, its wooden frame and felt roof becoming smaller and smaller until it is just a dark dot on the tawny grassland. The mare walks with a slightly different rhythm than the gelding. Her stride is a little longer, her footfall a fraction softer, as if she is testing the ground more carefully. You feel this difference through the saddle, a subtle shift in the pattern of motion that your body notes and then accepts. After a few minutes, the new rhythm has become the only rhythm, and you can no longer recall exactly how the gelding felt. The mind adapts quickly to such things, exchanging one set of sensations for another without fuss. The afternoon continues around you, unchanged in its essentials, but slowly sliding toward evening. The light is still golden, but the gold has deepened a shade, moving from pale honey towards something richer, more amber. The shadows of the grass clumps stretch out longer now, thin, dark fingers pointing eastward. The breeze, which had been almost absent during the hottest part of the day, has picked up again, and it now blows steadily from the northwest, a cool current that presses against your left cheek and stirs the mare's mane into a gentle dance. You pull the front of your felt coat a little tighter, not because it is cold, but because the wind carries a hint of the evening chill that will arrive in a few hours. The wool of the coat is warm against your chest, and the collar sits snugly around your neck, a barrier against the steady push of the air. The mare seems to enjoy the breeze, her ears forward, her nostrils flaring slightly to catch the scents that ride the wind. You ride on in silence, the hoofbeats a steady counterpoint to the whisper of the grass. The station is now completely out of sight, merged back into the uniform plain, and the landscape ahead offers no new features. It is the same brown-green carpet, the same pale sky, the same distant horizon that seems always to recede at the exact pace of your approach. You let your gaze soften, your focus spreading out to include the whole view rather than any single point, and you feel the familiar sensation of dissolving into the ride, of becoming a part of the great quiet that surrounds you. The scroll case presses gently against your thigh with each step of the mare, a reminder that your task continues, that the sealed wax disc and the hidden words inside are still moving toward their destination. You place your hand on it for a moment, feeling the smooth leather and the hard shape of the wax, and then you return your hand to the reins. The gesture is automatic, a check that requires no thought, like touching a talisman. The mare walks on, and the afternoon deepens around you, slow and golden and utterly calm. You think about the station master behind you, tending his small domain in the middle of nowhere, and about the fresh horse beneath you, its strength and patience a gift freely given. You think about the network of stations that stretches across the entire empire, an invisible web of rest and replacement that allows a message to travel vast distances without pause. You are a single thread in that web, moving along your assigned segment, and when you reach the next station, another thread will take your place and you will rest. This knowledge is comforting in its simplicity, a structure that requires nothing of you except the steady completion of each small step. The sun inches lower, and you ride on, carrying the scroll case and the quiet purpose it represents, into the wide, empty afternoon that still has many hours to give. As the sun drops toward the horizon, the temperature shifts almost at once, and a steady wind rises out of the northwest, pressing against your left side with a constant cool pressure. The change arrives so gradually that you do not notice its beginning, only that at some point the warmth of the afternoon has given way to something sharper, a coolness that slips through the weave of your wool coat and touches the skin beneath. The mare beneath you feels it too, her ears swiveling back for a moment as the first gust pushes through her mane, and then she settles, accepting the new condition with the same calm she has shown all day. The light begins its slow transformation, turning first to amber, a shade that seems to rise from the grass itself, as if the earth is releasing the stored warmth of the day. The stems of the grass glow with a soft inner color, their pale brown stalks now tipped with a honeyed luminescence that makes each blade distinct, separate from its neighbors in a way it was not under the flat noon light. The amber deepens, and then it shifts again, becoming a deep orange that spreads across the whole western half of the sky, and stains the grass with a glow that is almost liquid. The eastern sky remains a cool, pale blue, untouched by the color, and the line where the two meet runs directly overhead, a boundary between the warm and the cool that you can see as clearly as the edge of a shadow. You pull the front of your felt coat a little tighter, tucking the overlapping panel more securely under your sash, and you watch your horse's shadow stretch into a long, thin shape that ripples over the uneven ground. The shadow extends far to your right now, the mare's legs impossibly long, your own silhouette, a dark hooded figure swaying atop a dark elongated animal. The shadow moves across the grass, and the bare patches of earth, bending and straightening as the ground rises and falls, in gentle undulations you cannot feel from the saddle. When the shadow passes over a tussock of thicker grass, it deforms, spreading into a wider blob, and then it snaps back to its narrow shape as the ground levels again. The wind carries the clean scent of dry grass and distant sage, a smell that is both sharp and soft at the same time. It hums through the loose fibers of your felt hat with a low, steady note, a sound like a single sustained breath blown across the top of a wide clay jar. The hat brim vibrates faintly, and you feel the tickle of the moving air against your ears, a sensation that is neither cold nor warm, but simply present. You tilt your head slightly, to let the wind pass more directly across your cheek, and for a moment the full force of it cools the skin around your eyes, a refreshing reminder of the immense open space through which you travel. The mare walks on with the same steady pace, her hooves thudding softly on the dry earth, and now the sound seems louder in the cooling air, as if the dropping temperature carries sound more clearly. You can hear the faint creak of the saddle leather, the occasional jingle of the bit ring, and the rhythmic whisper of your coat against the cantle, each sound distinct and separate in the growing stillness. The grass hisses under the mare's belly, a continuous soft shushing that blends with the wind note from your hat to form a gentle, ongoing chord. Birds you cannot name appear in small flocks, flying low and fast across the orange sky, their wings beating with a quick, urgent rhythm that seems out of place in the calm evening. They are dark silhouettes against the glowing west, their bodies small and compact, their flight paths straight and purposeful, as if they are heading to a roost you cannot see. One flock passes directly overhead, and you hear the soft rush of their wings, a sound like a distant shaken cloth, and then they are gone, swallowed by the distance. A second flock follows a few minutes later, smaller this time, only 5 or 6 birds, and they too disappear into the east. After that the sky is empty of birds, empty of everything except the slow dissolution of color into a cool grey that begins to creep upward from the eastern horizon. The orange in the west intensifies for a brief period, reaching a brilliance that is almost too bright to look at directly, and then it begins to soften, the edges blurring into a pale peach and then into a lavender that spreads across the higher parts of the sky. The clouds, which you had not noticed during the day because there were none, now appear as thin streaks of pink and coral, high cirrus strands that catch the last direct light of the sun. They stretch from north to south in long parallel lines, and as you watch, they shift from pink to grey to a faint silver, and then they are gone, merged into the darkening blue. The sun's disk now touches the horizon, its lower edge flattening against the dark line of the earth. It is a deep orange-red, larger than it seemed at noon, and you can look at it directly without discomfort because its light has been filtered through the thickest part of the atmosphere. The edges of the disk waver slightly, a mirage effect caused by the different temperatures of the air layers, and for a moment the sun seems to pulse, as if taking a slow breath before its final descent. Then the flattening continues, and the disk becomes a hemisphere, then a sliver, then a thin curved line of brilliant orange that sits on the horizon like a single ember of a dying fire. The wind, which had been steady from the northwest, now drops for a moment, and in the sudden stillness you hear the silence of the grassland more completely. It is a silence that has depth and weight, a silence made of the absence of all the small sounds that fill the daylight hours. The mare's hoofbeats are suddenly the only sound in the world, and they seem to hang in the air for a fraction of a second longer than they should. Then the wind returns, gentler now, from a slightly more northerly direction, and the silence recedes into the background. The sun's last sliver slips below the horizon without a sound, and the world changes instantly. The orange glow remains in the sky, a band of warm color that will linger for some time, but the land itself darkens, the grass losing its individual detail and becoming a uniform dark mass. The shadows, which had been long and thin, merge into the general darkness, and the mare's legs become invisible beneath her body, so that she seems to float above the ground on a dark cushion. Your own hands on the reins are now just shapes, the fingers indistinct, the leather of the reins a darker line against the dark wool of your coat. You keep riding as the light fades, not because you are in a hurry, but because the air feels good against your face and the rhythm of the horse seems to belong to this exact hour. There is a particular quality to evening riding, a sense of alignment with the natural slowing of the world, that makes you want to continue even though you know you will soon need to stop and make camp. The mare seems to feel it too. Her pace has not quickened, but there is a steadiness in her stride, a quiet willingness, that tells you she is content to walk through the dusk. You let the reins stay loose and simply sit, feeling the gentle motion of her shoulders, watching the last colors fade from the sky. The band of orange at the western horizon narrows and cools, passing through amber to a soft gold, then to a pale yellow-green that is the color of certain winter grasses. Above it, The sky has turned a deep blue that is almost purple, and in this darker part the first stars begin to appear. They come not all at once but one by one, tiny points of white light that seem to flicker into existence as you watch. The brightest appear first, a single star directly overhead and another low in the southwest, and then more follow, filling the eastern half of the sky while the west still holds the last traces of daylight. The transition from day to night is gradual and gentle, a slow blending that gives the eyes time to adjust and the mind time to settle into the new darkness. The grassland becomes a dark, quiet bowl under a sky that still holds a trace of amber along one edge, and you feel as though you are riding across the bottom of an enormous basin whose rim is the horizon. The sense of space changes with the loss of light. Distances become impossible to judge, and the horizon seems closer, as if the bowl is smaller than the plain you cross during the day. The stars overhead are sharp and numerous, and they cast a very faint light, not enough to see by, but enough to make the mare's ears visible as dark points against the sky. Her hooves continue their steady rhythm, and you hear each footfall clearly now, the sound crisp in the cool evening air. The temperature continues to drop, and you feel the cold beginning to creep into your fingers through the leather of your gloves. You flex your hands, opening and closing them to keep the blood moving, and then you tuck them into the sleeves of your coat, holding the reins with the crook of your elbows. The mare's breath comes out in small clouds now, visible as pale puffs that appear and then vanish, appearing again with each exhale. The clouds are the only white things in the dark landscape, small ghostly signals of the animal's steady life. You begin to think about stopping for the night. There is no fixed rule about when to camp. The decision is made by the feel of your body, the state of the horse, and the quality of the available ground. You scan the darkness ahead, looking for a flat spot between hummocks, a place where the grass is thin enough to allow a small fire and where the wind will be broken by a slight rise. The mare walks on while you search, and after a while you see a darker patch ahead that might be a shallow depression between two low mounds, a natural shelter from the steady wind. You turn the mare toward it with a gentle pressure of your leg, and she adjusts her course without hesitation. The depression is as you hoped, a flat area of bare earth, perhaps an old wallow with low grassy banks on two sides that will block the worst of the night wind. You draw the mare to a halt and sit for a moment, listening. The wind hums over the top of the banks, a low note that rises and falls, and the grass rustles all around, but in the depression itself, the air is almost still. The stars shine down, and the last trace of amber has now completely gone from the western sky, leaving only the deep blue-black of full night. You swing down from the saddle, your boots landing on the hard earth, and you stand for a moment with your hand on the mare's neck, feeling the warmth of her coat under your palm. The journey is not over, but this part of it, the long evening ride through the changing light and the rising wind, has reached its natural close. The night is here, calm and dark, and full of stars, and the grassland settles into its nocturnal quiet, a quiet that will hold until the first grey light of dawn returns to begin the cycle again. When the last light is gone and the stars begin to appear in patches across the darkening dome of the sky, you choose a flat spot between two low hummocks and swing down from the saddle for the final time that day. The ground here is bare in the center, the grass worn away by some old wallow or by the simple passage of wind and time, and the two rises on either side will serve as a modest windbreak through the long hours until dawn. The mare stands quietly as you dismount, her head low, her breathing deep and slow after the steady walking of the evening. You pat her neck once, feeling the warmth still rising from her coat, and then you set to the small tasks that make a camp. You unsaddle the horse first, loosening the girth strap and lifting the wooden frame carefully from her back. The felt saddle pad beneath is damp along the edges, and you lay it over one of the hummocks with the damp side up, so the night air can dry it. The mare shakes herself once, a full-body shudder that starts at her ears and travels all the way to her tail, and then she stands still again, lighter now and clearly comfortable. You take a handful of dry grass and rub down her back where the saddle sat, working the stiff stalks in slow circles over the area where the hair has been pressed flat. The mare arches her neck slightly, enjoying the scratch, and you continue this for a while, moving along her spine and down her flanks, feeling the texture of her coat change from smooth to rough and back again. When you are finished, you hobble her front legs with a short leather strap, buckling it loosely enough that she can walk but not run. She will graze nearby through the night, cropping the grass in a slow wandering circle around the camp. The next task is fuel, and you walk out from the camp in an expanding spiral, your eyes adjusted now to the starlight. Dried dung chips lie scattered across the grassland, the leavings of wild horses and cattle that pass through these plains, and they are easy to find by touch, light and crumbly, and still holding a faint grassy smell. You gather a double handful and carry them back to the bare patch of earth, then go out again for a second handful and a third, building a small pile. Each trip takes you farther from the mare, but you can still hear her cropping grass, a steady tearing sound that tells you she is near and content. You arrange the dung chips into a tiny cone, the smallest pieces at the center, and you take out your fire steel and a scrap of charred cloth from a pouch at your belt. Kneeling on the hard earth, you strike the steel against the flint, and a small shower of sparks jumps into the charred cloth, catching immediately with an orange glow. You blow on it gently, once, twice, and the glow spreads into a tiny flame. You touch the flame to the driest of the dung chips, and it catches after a moment a pale yellow fire that flickers more light than warmth, but that is enough. You add larger chips one by one, letting each ignite before you place the next, and soon you have a small steady fire that crackles very softly and sends a thin column of smoke straight up into the still air. The fire makes a circle of warm light around you, perhaps 2 paces across, and beyond that circle the night is absolute. The hummocks catch the flicker of the flames on their grassy sides, their shapes appearing and disappearing in a slow pulse. Above, the stars have grown sharper and more numerous, spread across the blackness in a thick band of light that arches from one horizon to the other, the great river of the sky that the older travelers call the Winter Road. You sit back on your heels and watch the fire for a moment, letting the warmth touch your face and hands, feeling the day's long ride settle into your bones. You take out the small copper pot from your saddlebag, a simple vessel with a wire handle and a dent in one side from some journey long before yours, and you pour water into it from the water skin. The water gurgles softly as it fills the pot, and you set the pot directly on the fire, balancing it on 3 dung chips that you push together to form a trivet. While the water heats, you unwrap the strip of dried mutton and break off a piece, then another, dropping them into the pot. The meat is so hard that it clinks against the copper, but you know that the hot water will soften it, releasing its salt and its deep flavor into a thin broth. The water takes a long time to heat over the small dung fire, and you sit cross-legged on the bare earth, your hands resting on your knees, watching the tiny bubbles begin to form on the bottom of the pot. The bubbles appear one by one, silver beads that cling to the copper for a moment and then rise to the surface, where they pop with a sound so small it is barely a whisper. The steam begins to rise, a faint white curl that carries the first scent of the mutton, a rich savory smell that makes your stomach tighten with a hunger you had not noticed during the ride. The mare grazes on, her hobbled steps making a soft shuffling sound in the grass, and an owl calls somewhere far to the north, a single low note that hangs in the air and then fades. When the broth is ready, the meat softened and the water turned a pale brown, you lift the pot from the fire using a folded corner of your coat to protect your hand from the hot handle. You set the pot on the ground in front of you and let it cool for a moment, watching the steam rise and curl, breathing in the smell. Then you lift the pot to your lips and drink directly from the rim, tasting the salt and the smoke and the deep flavor of preserved meat. The broth is not complex, but it is warm and it is good, and it spreads a comfortable heat through your chest and down into your stomach. You eat the pieces of softened mutton with your fingers, chewing slowly, savoring each bite, and when the pot is empty, you pour a little more water into it and drink that too, collecting the last traces of salt. After the meal, you sit for a while without moving, the empty pot resting beside you, the fire burning down to a bed of orange embers. The warmth of the broth has driven the evening chill from your body, and you feel heavy and calm. the way you always feel after a simple meal eaten under the open sky. The stars continue their slow wheel overhead, and if you watch carefully, you can almost perceive their motion, the way the whole field of lights tilts incrementally toward the west. The bright group you had noticed earlier, a tight cluster of stars that forms a shape like a shepherd's crook, has moved noticeably since you first spotted it, now hanging lower in the sky, its hook pointing downward toward the dark horizon. You rise at last and prepare your bed. The saddle you place on the ground with the seat upward, the wooden frame making a low headrest. Over this you lay the dry felt saddle pad, and on top of that you spread the heavy woolen blanket that had been rolled behind the saddle. The blanket is thick and coarse, smelling faintly of horse and dust and old smoke, and it is large enough to wrap around your entire body. You lie down on your side, your head resting on the saddle seat, cushioned by a fold of the blanket, and you pull the remaining blanket over you, tucking it under your chin and around your shoulders. The ground is hard but not cold, the day's heat still stored in the packed earth, and your body fits into the small hollows and rises as if the ground has accepted your shape. From your position on the ground, the world looks different. The fire is now a low mound of embers at the edge of your vision, pulsing with a soft orange glow that brightens when a breath of wind passes over it and then dims again. The hummocks rise on either side like the walls of a small room, their grassy tops outlined against the stars. The mare is a dark shape a little distance away, her head down, her tail swishing slowly. You hear her cropping the grass, a rhythmic sound made of a soft tear, followed by a grinding chew, then another tear, another grind. The sound is steady and reassuring, a sign that all is well, that no predator moves nearby, that the night will pass without event. You lie still and let your thoughts drift. The scroll case is tied to the saddle beside your head, and you can reach out and touch it if you wish. Its leather is cool under your fingers, the wax seal still hard and intact. You do not think about its contents, there is no need. You think instead about the day that has passed, the long ride through the morning and the heat of noon, the river crossing with its cool water and its dappled shade, the station and the fresh mare, the sunset and the slow fade of light into stars. The memories are calm and orderly, each one following the last, like the chapters of a book read aloud in a quiet voice. An insect somewhere nearby begins to chirp, a high thin note that repeats at regular intervals, and you listen to it for a while, letting it become part of the night's fabric. The wind has dropped to almost nothing, and the silence between the chirps is deep and full, a silence that seems to press gently against your ears. You hear your own breathing, slow and even, and the softer sound of the mare's breathing from across the camp. The two rhythms are different, yours faster and hers slower, but they seem to belong together, two parts of the same quiet machinery of rest. You turn onto your other side, pulling the blanket with you, and you face the fire embers. They are lower now, the orange fading to a deep red, and you know that in an hour or two they will be completely dark, reduced to a pile of fine grey ash. The warmth from the embers still reaches your face, a faint dry heat that is more memory than actual warmth, and you close your eyes, feeling the weight of the day in your limbs. Your legs ache slightly from the long hours in the saddle, a dull, deep soreness in the thighs and behind the knees, and you stretch them out slowly, pointing your toes and then relaxing, feeling the ache ease. A distant sound reaches you, a thin yipping call that rises and falls, and you recognize it as a fox, probably hunting mice in the grass somewhere far to the east. The call comes again, higher this time, and then a third time, and then the night is silent again except for the cropping of the mare and the fading tick of the cooling embers. The fox has moved on, its hunt continuing elsewhere, and its voice has already become part of the past, a small event in a night made of small events. You open your eyes one more time and look up at the stars. The band of the winter road stretches directly overhead, a dense river of light made of countless individual points that your eyes cannot separate. The dark patches within the band are clouds of dust, you have been told, vast regions where the light is blocked, and the thought of such immensity is too large to hold, so you let it go and simply look, letting the stars be what they are, distant and beautiful and utterly indifferent. The shepherd's crook has moved farther west, and a new group of stars has risen in the east, a wide triangle of 3 bright points that you have seen before but never named. Your eyelids grow heavy, and the stars blur slightly, then clear again as you blink. The mare shifts her weight, the hobble strap creaking, and then she settles. The embers pulse once, a brief flare of orange, and then go dark. The insect has stopped its chirping, and the only sound now is the soft sigh of the wind as it passes high overhead, above the level of the hummocks, touching the tops of the grass, but not reaching down into your small sheltered hollow. The blanket is warm around you, and your body has found the perfect position, the saddle a firm support for your head, the ground molded to your hip and shoulder. You let your eyes close and keep them closed, and the darkness behind your eyelids is a deep, warm brown, not the cold black of the sky. Your breathing slows, matching itself to the rhythm of the mare's cropping, and your thoughts become soft and scattered, fragments of images and sensations that drift through your mind without connecting. The river water cool on your face, the taste of salted tea, the shadow of the horse stretching long across the grass, the orange of the sunset, the shape of the shepherd's crook in the stars. These images come and go, and you do not hold on to any of them, letting them pass like the clouds that were not there during the day. The last thing you are aware of before sleep takes you is the sound of the mare exhaling a long, slow breath, a soft chuff that hangs in the cold air, and the feeling of the scroll case beside your head, solid and steady, carrying its sealed message through the quiet night just as you have carried it through the quiet day. Then the silence deepens, and the stars continue their slow wheel overhead, and the small camp in the hollow between 2 hummocks settles into the deep stillness of the steppe at night. Sometime deep in the night, you open your eyes without knowing why and become aware of a faint sound that seems to come from very far away, a soft thudding rhythm that rises and falls with the breeze. The darkness inside your small sheltered hollow is complete. The fire embers long since cooled to grey ash, and the stars overhead have wheeled through a quarter of the sky while you slept. You lie still under the heavy blanket, your breath making a small warm pocket against your chin, and you listen without moving, letting the distant sound define itself. It is the sound of hooves, you realize after a long moment, the steady beat of a horse walking somewhere far off to the south. The rhythm is the same unhurried pace you have kept all day, a 4-beat walk that speaks of patience and distance rather than haste, and it carries through the cold night air with a clarity that surprises you. The sound does not grow louder, nor does it fade. It simply continues at a constant level, as if the horse and its rider are moving along a path that runs parallel to your camp, never coming closer, never drawing away. You picture them in your mind, a dark shape on a dark horse, perhaps another messenger following a different invisible path across the same vast plain, carrying another sealed scroll toward another distant destination. You lie still and listen, your ears separating the layers of the night's quiet. Beneath the distant hooves, you can hear the softer sound of your own mare cropping grass, somewhere to your left, the steady tear and grind that has been the background to your sleep. Above that, the wind moves through the tops of the hummocks with a low, continuous sigh, and beneath everything, the deep silence of the steppe itself, a silence so old and so complete that it seems to have a texture, like the smooth surface of a very old stone. The distant hooves thread through all these layers, a regular pulse that comes and goes with the shifting of the breeze, and you find yourself matching your breath to it without intending to, inhaling for 4 beats and exhaling for 4. You shift your weight slightly under the blanket, turning your head just enough to look toward the south, though there is nothing to see. The horizon in that direction is a slightly lighter band of darkness where the sky meets the land, and the stars there are thick and bright, but no moving shape interrupts them. The rider, whoever it is, carries no light, and the horse is invisible against the black grass. Only the sound gives them away, a soft thudding that seems to come from the ground itself, rather than from any particular point in the darkness. The sound has no urgency. It is a steady, unhurried beat, like a pulse felt through the earth rather than heard by the ears. You feel it in your chest, a faint vibration that might be real or might be your imagination, and you let it settle into you. A reminder that you are not the only one moving through this night. The YAM network never sleeps, you know. Riders travel at all hours, following the stars or the feel of the land, carrying orders and reports and news across distances that take weeks to cross. Somewhere ahead of you, the scroll you carry will be passed to another rider, and another, and another, a chain of hands and horses that stretches across the entire empire. The rider to the south is a link in that same chain, moving along their own segment, and the sound of their passage is like the sound of water flowing through a distant pipe, a sign of a larger system working quietly in the dark. The who's pass slowly from left to right, moving across your awareness in a long, steady arc, and you track their progress by the subtle changes in the sound. At first they are slightly to the southeast, the beat clear and distinct, and then they move to due south, where the sound is softened by some rise in the ground, and then they shift to the southwest, growing fainter as the distance increases. The whole passage takes a long time, many minutes, and you lie still through all of it, not wanting to move and break the spell of the listening. The mare has paused in her grazing, you notice, and she too is standing still, her ears pointed toward the south, her breath held for a moment before she exhales and returns to the grass. She has heard it, and she has decided it is nothing to worry about, and her calmness reassures you more than any thought could. The sound grows fainter as the rider moves on, the hoofbeats becoming softer and less distinct until they are just a rhythmic suggestion at the edge of your hearing. Then they merge back into the immense quiet that fills the grassland at night, and you cannot tell the moment when they stop completely, only that at some point you realize you are listening to silence again. The rider is gone, swallowed by the distance, and the plain is once more empty of everything except you and the mare and the stars. You shift your weight again, feeling the cold air on your cheek where it has crept under the edge of the blanket. The night has grown colder while you slept, the ground beneath you now cool rather than warm, and you pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders, tucking it under your chin. Your legs are stiff from lying in one position, and you stretch them slowly, pointing your toes and feeling the muscles in your calves tighten and then release. The saddle is still firm under your head, the wooden frame pressing through the felt pad in a way that is not uncomfortable, but simply present, a solid shape in a world of soft darkness. You hear your own mare exhale a long breath not far away, a sound that is half sigh and half chuff, and you turn your head to look for her. She is a dark shape against the slightly lighter darkness of the hummock, her head down, her hobbled front legs planted wide. She has finished her grazing for the moment and is resting, one hind leg cocked, her tail still. The sight of her, calm and steady, settles something in you, and you let your head fall back onto the saddle, your eyes returning to the stars. The stars have moved a little, the bright group you were watching earlier, now tilting toward the western rim of the world. The shepherd's crook has almost reached the horizon, its hook dipping low, and a new group has risen in the east to take its place. A wide, scattered cluster of stars that forms no particular shape you can name. The winter road still arches overhead, dense and bright, its edges blurred by the finer dust of stars too small to see individually. You think about the rider to the south, wondering where they are now, whether they have reached a station or found their own hollow to camp in, whether they too are lying under a blanket, looking up at the same stars. The thought is strangely comforting, a sense of shared purpose across the dark, empty miles. A small sound breaks the silence, a soft rustle in the grass just beyond the hummock, and you hold your breath for a moment, listening. It is only the wind, you decide, or perhaps a small creature, a mouse or a vole, moving through the stems in search of seeds. The rustle comes again, closer this time, and then stops. You wait, but the sound does not return, and you let your breath out slowly, your body relaxing back into the blanket. The night is full of small sounds like this, the secret movements of the grassland's smallest inhabitants, and they are no threat, only the evidence of a world that never truly sleeps. You close your eyes again, letting the memory of the distant rider fade into the dark behind your eyelids. The hoofbeats have left a trace in your mind, a rhythmic afterimage that continues for a while, and you follow it as it slows and softens and finally dissolves. Your breathing deepens, and you feel the warmth of the blanket beginning to build again around your body, a pocket of heat that the cold night air cannot reach. The ground beneath you has accepted your shape completely now, and you feel as though you are floating just above the earth, suspended in the thick wool and the dark air. The mare shifts her weight, the hobble strap creaking, and then she settles again. The wind drops to nothing, and in the sudden absolute stillness you hear the blood moving in your own ears, a distant rushing that sounds like the sea you have never seen. The sound is soothing, a white noise that fills your head and blocks out any remaining awareness of the cold or the hard ground. You let it carry you, floating on the slow tide of your own body, and the last conscious thought you have before sleep returns is that the rider to the south is probably sleeping too, somewhere far away, and that the scroll beside your head and the scroll beside theirs are both moving steadily toward their destinations, even in the dark, even in the silence, even while the whole world rests. You wait just before dawn to a world that has transformed overnight into a soft grey ocean of fog. The change is so complete that for a moment you are not certain whether you have opened your eyes at all, the greyness pressing against your face with the same dim uniformity as the inside of your closed eyelids. Then you feel the cold moisture beading on your cheeks, tiny droplets that have settled from the mist while you slept. And you know that the world has remade itself while you were gone from it. You sit up slowly under the heavy blanket, and the fob swirls around your movement in slow coils, parting just enough to reveal the shapes of the hummocks on either side and then closing again behind your shoulders. Every blade of grass is beaded with clear droplets that catch what little light exists, each drop holding a tiny copy of the grey sky and the darker grey of the mist. The fire pit is a dark smear of wet ash, and the mare is a ghostly shape, a short distance away, her back beaded with moisture, her head turned toward you, with one ear forward and one ear back as she assesses the strange new world. You push the blanket aside and stand, and the cold moisture immediately soaks the hem of your coat where it brushes the grass. The wetness is thorough and penetrating, a cold that does not bite but simply seeps, and you feel it working through the wool fibers, seeking the warmth of your skin. You stamp your feet once to wake them, and the sound is flat and small, swallowed by the fog almost before it leaves you. The air is so full of moisture that all sounds seem muffled and close, as though the world has shrunk to a small grey room whose walls are made of mist. You walk to the mare, your boots pressing into the damp earth with a soft sucking sound, and you take down the hobble strap. The leather is cold and slick in your hands, and you coil it and hang it from the saddle, which still rests on the ground where you placed it last night. The mare shakes her head, sending a shower of droplets from her mane, and then she stands still, waiting. You rub your hand along her back, and find it damp but warm beneath the surface moisture, the deep heat of her body still strong from the night's slow burning of grass and hay. The saddle pad has absorbed moisture along its edges, and you shake it once, twice, the droplets flying off in a fine spray, before you lay it across the mare's back. The wooden saddle frame follows, and you tighten the girth in small increments, the leather cold and stiff under your fingers, the buckle tongue slipping into a hole that is one notch looser than yesterday because the mare has lost a little belly fullness during the night. You pack the blanket without shaking it out, because the dew would only soak it further. Instead, you roll it tightly and tie it behind the saddle with the leather thongs, the oiled cloth wrapper making a soft crinkling sound that is the loudest thing in the muffled world. The fog hides everything beyond 30 paces, a wall of grey-white that shifts and pulses with the slow breathing of the air. You can see the hummocks and the bare patch of earth where your fire was, and you can see the mare clearly, but beyond that the world dissolves into a uniform pale grey that has no features and no depth. The horizon is gone, the sky is gone, and you have the sensation of standing on a small island of grass that floats in an endless sea of cloud. There is no wind, and the stillness is so complete that you can hear the individual drops of water falling from the mare's mane onto the saddle leather, a soft, irregular pattering like the first drops of a rain that never comes. You set your direction by the pale glow where the sun is trying to rise, a diffuse lightening in the eastern fog that is more a feeling than a visible point. It is the faintest possible difference, a shift from medium grey to slightly lighter grey, and you hold it in your mind as you mount, your left foot finding the stirrup and your body swinging up into the saddle with a single motion. The saddle leather is damp and cool beneath you, and the scroll case presses against your thigh, its leather slick with moisture. You check the knot that holds it, find it tight, and then you gather the reins and turn the mare toward that distant pale glow. You walk the horse forward at a pace so slow that you can hear each individual drop of water falling from the horse's mane onto the saddle leather, a soft and irregular rhythm that becomes the measure of your progress. The mare's hooves press into the wet earth with a sound that is not the dry thud of yesterday, but a softer, wetter sound, a squelch and release that repeats with each step. The grass hisses against her belly, the sound louder now because the grass is heavy with water, and you feel the occasional brush of a tall soaked stem against your boot, leaving a dark trail of moisture on the leather. The world is silent except for these small sounds. The wet thud of hooves, the pattering of droplets, the occasional soft chuff of the horse clearing her nostrils, and the steady creak of the saddle leather that has become as familiar as your own heartbeat. The fog absorbs all other sounds, the distant birds, the wind, the rustle of small creatures in the grass, and it wraps you in a cocoon of quiet that is different from the silence of the open steppe. This is a close, intimate silence, a silence that seems to have a texture, soft and thick and almost tangible, like felt pressed against the ears. Now and then a shape emerges from the mist, a clump of taller grass with its seed heads drooping under the weight of collected water, a solitary rock flecked with pale lichen that glistens with moisture, the dark skeleton of a long-dead shrub whose brittle branches wear sleeves of silver droplets. Each shape appears without warning, looming out of the grey with a suddenness that is not startling but merely unexpected, and then it slides past you and disappears behind into the white stillness, swallowed as completely as if it had never been. You turn once to look back, and the rock is gone, and the dead shrub is gone, and there is only the grey wall closing behind the mare's tail, erasing your passage as thoroughly as the tide erases footprints in sand. The mare walks on with her head low, her ears moving constantly, catching sounds that you cannot hear, navigating by senses that you do not possess. You trust her completely, letting the reins stay loose, and she maintains the direction you set by the pale glow, correcting herself now and then with a slight turn of her shoulders that you feel through the saddle. You do not know how she does this, whether she follows the memory of the terrain or the faint scent of the grass that persists even through the moisture, or some other guidance that horses share with migrating birds and wandering stars. You only know that she is steady and sure, and that is enough. The fog has a taste, you notice, a clean, cold taste that coats your tongue when you breathe through your mouth. It is the taste of water that has never touched the ground, water that has been suspended in the air since it evaporated from some distant sea and has travelled across a continent to settle here, on this patch of steppe, on this morning, on your lips. You lick the moisture from your lips and swallow, and it is like drinking the sky itself, thin and cold and faintly sweet. You ride for what seems like a long time, though you have no way to measure it. The light in the east grows slowly brighter, the diffuse glow intensifying from pale grey to a soft silver, and the fog begins to brighten as well, taking on a luminous quality that makes it seem to glow from within. The droplets on the grass catch this light and hold it, each one a tiny pearl of silver, and the whole plain becomes a field of scattered jewels that stretches as far as you can see, which is not very far. The beauty of it is quiet and unassuming, a beauty that asks for no admiration, and you take it in without comment, letting it become part of the long, slow fabric of the ride. The mare's breath comes out in clouds that merge with the fog, and your own breath does the same, and you have the strange sense that you and the horse are breathing out the mist itself, that you are creating the world around you with each exhale. The thought is fanciful, and you let it drift away, but the image stays, a soft dissolving at the edges of your awareness. A bird calls somewhere ahead, a single clear note that cuts through the muffled air with surprising sharpness, and you lift your head at the sound. The call is repeated, 3 descending notes that seem familiar, and then the bird falls silent, and the fog swallows the echo. But the core has told you something, that the fog is beginning to lift, that the birds are waking, that the world is still there beyond the grey. You feel a subtle shift in the air, a slight movement that might be the first stirring of a breeze, and you know that the fog will not last much longer. The grey around you begins to thin, not all at once but in patches, the mist tearing open in one place and closing in another. You catch a glimpse of a wider stretch of grass, its surface glittering with dew, and then the fog closes again and it is gone. Another tier opens to your right, and you see the dark shape of a distant hill that you did not know was there, and then the fog returns and the hill is lost. These glimpses come more frequently as you ride, the world flickering in and out of view like an image seen through a waving curtain, and you feel a quiet anticipation, a readiness to see the full plain again. The sun finally breaks through, a pale white disk visible for a moment through the thinning mist, and then the fog rolls back all at once, retreating across the plain like a grey tide going out. The world opens around you with a suddenness that takes your breath, the grasslands stretching away in all directions, every blade distinct, every seed head bright with moisture, the whole immense plain glittering under a sky that is still pale but now visibly blue at the zenith. The horizon is back, that thin line where tan meets pale sky, and you can see for miles the land rolling in long, gentle undulations that were hidden before. You stop the mare for a moment and simply look. The fog still clings to the lowest hollows, white pools that lie in the folds of the land like spilled milk, and they will burn off soon as the sun climbs higher. The dew is already beginning to steam from the grass, a faint mist rising that is the inverse of the fog, and the air is warming by slow degrees. The mare shakes her head again, her ears flicking, and you feel the saddle leather warming under you, the stored moisture beginning to evaporate. You resume your pace, a slow, steady walk, and the world is fresh and new around you, washed clean by the night and the fog. The colors are brighter than they were yesterday, the greens greener and the browns warmer, and the sky has a depth that it lacked before. You feel awake and alert, the last traces of sleep washed away by the cold moisture, and you are ready for the day ahead, for the long ride across the drying plain toward whatever comes next. The scroll case presses against your thigh, a familiar weight, and you touch it once with your hand, then return your hand to the reins, and the mare walks on into the brightening morning. The fog begins to thin as the sun burns through it, the grey-white wall dissolving not from the edges, but from the inside, as though the mist is being consumed by a quiet fire that you cannot see. Patches of pale blue appear overhead, growing larger and staying longer, and the world around you expands in slow increments, 10 paces of visibility becoming 20, then 50, then 100. The dew on the grass catches the strengthening light and holds it, each blade tipped with a drop of silver that will soon be steam. You watch the fog retreat into the low hollows, where it will linger a while longer, and then you turn your attention to the ground ahead, which has begun to change in a way that takes you a long moment to recognize. You are climbing. The slope is so gentle that the mare's breathing has not altered, and her stride is the same steady full-beat walk she has kept since you mounted in the grey dawn. But the land is tilted upward, a rise so subtle that only your body knows it, a faint pull in your lower back that tells you the angle of the saddle has shifted. You lean slightly forward not because you need to, but because your body responds automatically to the new gradient, your weight shifting to help the mare's balance, and she acknowledges this with a small flick of one ear before continuing her patient walk. The character of the grass shifts as you climb. The change is so gradual that you notice them only after they have happened. The tall brown-green stalks of the lowland have given way to something shorter and tougher, a wiry grass that grows in tight compact clumps with bare earth between them. The seed heads are smaller here and darker, a deep bronze rather than the pale silver of the plain below, and they do not wave in long ripples when the wind passes, but instead nod individually, each clump moving on its own. Small pale flowers dot the ground in scattered patches, their petals so thin they are almost transparent, a faint cream color with tiny yellow centers that turn to follow the sun. When the mare steps among them, a soft herbal scent rises, something like dried thyme or the crushed leaves of a plant you cannot name, and it lingers for a moment before the breeze carries it away. You ride upward for what seems like the whole middle of the day, the land tilting just enough to let you feel the work in the mare's hindquarters, a slight deepening of the push with each step. She does not labor or slow. She is a strong horse bred for distance and variation, and this long gradual ascent is well within her capacity. Her breathing remains deep and even. Her ears still swivel to catch the small sounds of the slope, and she climbs with the same calm patience she has shown across the flat plain. You reach forward and pat her neck, feeling the warmth of her coat and the slight dampness along the crest where the morning fog has not yet dried, and she chuffs once in response, a soft acknowledgement. The view behind you opens up slowly as you gain height, though the change is so incremental that you do not notice it, moment by moment. It is only when you turn in the saddle and look back that you see how far you have come and how high you have risen. The immense plain you crossed yesterday and this morning now stretches out below you, a brown-green carpet that reaches to a horizon that seems impossibly distant. The land looks slightly mottled from this height, darker patches where the dew has not yet dried, lying in the shallow dips and folds, and the pale line of the river you crossed hours ago is just barely visible as a thin grey-green thread winding through the tan. The waystation, the camp in the hollow, the rock with the lichen, all of these are too small to see, but you know they are there, hidden in the vast weave of grass and earth. You face forward again and let your eyes rest on the mare's ears, two dark points against the pale blue sky. The climb continues, and the sun climbs with you, the two of you rising together toward the apex of the day. The heat is different at this slight elevation, drier and thinner, and the sun feels closer, its light a more intense gold that makes the shadows sharp-edged and dark. You loosen the collar of your coat and feel the air move across your throat, a cool current that is constantly flowing down from the higher ground ahead. The wind here has a different sound, a higher note as it passes through the shorter grass, and it carries a clean mineral smell, the scent of old rock and bare earth, and the distant promise of higher hills. The mare's hooves strike the ground with a slightly different sound now, a sharper note, and when you look down you see that the soil has changed color, shifting from the pale tan of the plain to a darker brown shot through with small stones. These stones are rounded and smooth, river stones carried here by some ancient watercourse that no longer flows, and they click softly under the mare's iron shoes. You watch the ground pass beneath you, the stones appearing and disappearing, the tough grass giving way in places to bare patches of dark earth where nothing grows, and you feel the slope in your hips and knees, a gentle constant pressure that has become the background of your awareness. After a long while, you notice that the slope is beginning to ease. The pull in your lower back diminishes, and the mare's stride lengthens slightly as the ground flattens. You look ahead and see that you have reached the top of the rise, though there is no dramatic peak, no cliff edge, no sudden revelation. The land simply levels out into a broad flat ridge that stretches to the left and right, a wide shoulder of earth covered in the same short, tough grass and dotted with the same pale flowers. The wind moves freely up here, a steady flow that presses against you from the west and combs through the mare's tail, lifting the long dark hairs and letting them fall, lifting and letting fall in a slow rhythm. You pause here and let the horse rest, drawing her to a halt with a gentle pull on the reins. She stands motionless, her sides moving in and out with her deep, slow breaths, and you feel the rise and fall of her rib cage through the saddle. The wind hums around you, a low, steady note, and for a long moment you do nothing but sit and look and breathe the thin, clean air of the ridge. The view from here is the largest you have seen on this journey. The plain you crossed lies behind you like a map drawn in earth tones, its vastness now comprehensible in a way it was not when you were inside it. You can see the faint meandering line of the river, the darker patches of the willow scrub, and the barely visible dot that might be the waystation or might be only a shadow. Beyond the plain, so far away that they seem to float on the horizon, you can see another range of low hills, blue with distance, their shapes soft and rounded by the haze of all the miles between you. You did not know they were there, those distant hills. And now you do, and the knowledge settles into you quietly, another piece of the world added to your inner map. You turn your head and look to the north, and there you see something new as well, a range of even higher hills, their tops dark against the pale sky. They are not mountains, not the jagged snow-capped peaks you have heard described by travelers from the far western provinces, but they are substantial, a long blue-brown ridge that runs parallel to your path. The space between you and those hills is filled with the same rolling grass, but from this height you can see the undulations, the long, slow waves of the land that were invisible when you were down among them. The steppe is not flat, you realize. It is a frozen ocean. It swells and troughs, fixed in earth and grass, and you are a small boat crossing its surface. The mare shakes her head. The bit rings jingling, and you take the signal. She has rested enough, and the day is still long. You look ahead, where the ridge begins to slope downward, a descent as gentle as the ascent was, the land tilting away from you into a new expanse of grass and sky. You see no yurts, no smoke, no sign of your destination, only the same unending grass rolling away toward another horizon. But you know from the feel of the scroll case against your leg that you are still moving in the right direction, and that is enough. You squeeze your legs gently, and the mare walks forward onto the downward slope. The change in gradient is immediate in your body, a release of the pressure in your lower back and a slight shift forward as the saddle angle reverses. You lean back a little, your shoulders finding a new position, and the mare adjusts her stride, shortening it just a fraction to maintain her balance on the descending ground. The grass here is the same short, tough variety, and the stones are still scattered across the soil, but the flowers are more numerous, a whole carpet of pale cream dots that cover the slope like a dusting of snow. The descent takes you down into a wide, shallow valley, a broad bowl between the ridge you just crossed and the next low rise that waits ahead. The wind drops as you leave the exposed ridge, and the air grows warmer, the sun reflecting off the slopes on either side to create a pocket of mild heat. The flowers here are taller, their stems reaching up to the mare's knees, and they sway as she passes, brushing against her legs with a soft, continuous rustle. Butterflies move among them, small white ones that flutter up as you approach and settle again behind you, their wings catching the sun in brief flashes. You cross the valley floor, where a dry watercourse cuts through the earth, its bed filled with smooth, round stones that are larger than the ones on the ridge. There is no water in it now, only the memory of water, the shape of a stream that runs during the spring melt and then lies dormant through the summer months. The mare steps down into the channel and up the other side without breaking stride, her hooves clattering briefly on the stones, and then you are on the far slope, beginning another gentle climb toward the next ridge. The pattern of the land has established itself now, a rhythm of rise and fall, ridge and valley that repeats like the breathing of the earth. Each ridge you cross reveals another valley, and each valley leads to another ridge, and through all of them the grass continues, the sky arches, the sun moves along its patient arc. You settle into this new rhythm, your body learning the subtle shifts of weight that each slope requires, forward on the climbs and back on the descents, and the mare moves through it all with the same steady calm, her hooves beating out the same four-note pattern that has been the music of your journey. At the top of the next ridge, you pause again, not to rest the mare this time, but simply to look. The view behind you now shows the ridge you crossed earlier, its broad, flat top clearly visible, and beyond it, the faint blue line of the distant hills. The way you have come is written on the land, a long, straight track of flattened grass and occasional hoofprints that stretches back across the valleys and ridges until it fades into the haze. You follow it with your eyes for a moment, tracing your path, and then you turn forward again, toward what lies ahead. The land ahead is a mirror of the land behind, ridge after ridge rolling toward a horizon that seems to promise something but reveals nothing. You still see no sign of human habitation, no smoke, no distant shakes of gears, but you are not concerned. The scroll case is still there, the mare is still strong, and the afternoon is still young. You will ride until you find the next station, or until the light begins to fail, and then you will make camp again, and the night will pass, and the morning will come, and you will continue. This is the simple logic of the journey, a logic that requires no thought and no worry, only the steady completion of each small step. You ride on, into the shallow valley and up the next slope, the grass hissing under the mare's belly, the saddle creaking softly, the wind humming its low, continuous note. The pale flowers nod as you pass, and the butterflies rise and settle, and the stones click under the iron shoes, and the whole long afternoon stretches out before you, golden and calm and without end. Late in the afternoon, when the light is slanting and golden again, after the long crossing of ridges and shallow valleys, you see a cluster of shapes that at first look like low boulders scattered across the floor of a wide, shallow valley. You've been riding down a gentle slope for some time, the mare's hooves pressing into the same short, tough grass, and your eyes have grown accustomed to the unbroken sweep of the land, so the shapes register first as a slight irregularity, a darker patch in the tan-green expanse. You watch them as you ride, not quickening your pace, and slowly, over many minutes, the shapes begin to resolve into something human-made, the white domes of gers set in a loose circle on the flat valley bottom, their felt walls glowing softly in the low golden light. A thin column of smoke rises from a central stovepipe, bending immediately in the wind that moves steadily across the valley. The smoke is pale grey against the deeper blue of the eastern sky, and it flattens into a long ribbon before dissipating, a sign of a fire burning inside one of the gers. Around the camp a few horses graze in a loose herd, their heads down, their tails swishing lazily. They are dark shapes against the pale grass, moving slowly as they crop. A small wooden corral stands at one side of the camp, its poles lashed together with rawhide, and a cart with high wooden wheels rests beside it, its bed empty. There is no banner, no fortification, no mark of authority beyond the size of the camp and the quiet order of its arrangement. You ride down toward the camp at the same unhurried pace you have kept for days, the mare walking with her head held steady and her ears forward, curious but calm. The slope carries you into the valley, and as you approach, the details of the gers become clearer. The lattice walls visible through the felt in places, the painted wooden door of the largest ger with its simple geometric design, the ropes that anchor the roof to the ground stretching out at even angles. The camp is quiet, the quiet of a place where daily work is done without hurry, and the only sounds are the distant whicker of a horse, the low murmur of voices from inside a ger, and the steady sigh of the wind moving across the valley. A boy, perhaps 10 or 11 years old, appears from behind one of the smaller gers and stands watching you for a moment. He wears a thick felt coat that is too large for him, the sleeves rolled up several times, and his hair is cut straight across his forehead. When he sees that you are a messenger, he turns and runs toward the largest ger, his boots kicking up small puffs of dust. He disappears inside, and a moment later a man steps out through the painted door and stands in the open space before the ger, waiting. You ride up to the camp and draw the mare to a halt. The boy runs to your side and stands ready, his face serious, his hands already reaching for the reins. You swing down from the saddle, your boots landing on the packed earth with the familiar solid thud, and your legs feel the usual stiffness of long travel as you hand the reins to the boy. He takes them with a nod, his grip firm and practiced, and he leads the mare away toward the corral without speaking, his small figure walking beside the large horse with an ease that speaks of long familiarity. The man who has emerged from the largest ger stands a few paces away, watching you with calm eyes. He is dressed in a heavy felt coat, much like your own, but his is newer, the wool still a deep brown rather than the faded tan of your garment, and the collar is trimmed with a strip of dark fur. His face is lined and weathered, the face of someone who has spent many years out of doors, and his beard is grey and close-cropped. He holds himself with the quiet stillness of authority, the kind that does not need to announce itself, and his hands rest at his sides, open and relaxed. You step toward him and reach for the leather scroll case at your hip, untying the cord with fingers that move automatically through the familiar knot. The case comes free, its surface warm from riding against your leg all day, and you hold it out to him with both hands. He takes it without ceremony, his hands larger than yours and rough with calluses, and he checks the wax seal first, turning the case over in his hands to inspect the cord and the knot. The seal is intact, the hardened wax still holding the impression of the stamp you have never studied closely, and he nods once, a slow single dip of his chin before tucking the case under his arm. He asks no questions, and you offer no report beyond the delivery itself. There is no need for words. The presence of the scroll, the condition of its seal, and the direction from which you have come tell him everything he needs to know. He looks at you for a moment longer, his gaze taking in the dust on your coat, the lines of tiredness around your eyes, the way you hold your weight on one leg after the long hours in the saddle. Then he gestures toward a smaller ger that sits a little apart from the main circle. Its felt walls are soft grey-white in the golden light, and he says a few quiet words that you barely hear, but understand perfectly. You are to rest, and you are welcome. You nod your thanks and walk toward the smaller ger, your boots crunching softly on the packed earth. The boy has already unsaddled the mare and is rubbing her down with a handful of dry grass, his small hands moving in the same circular pattern you used last night, and you see that he knows his work well. The mare stands with her head low, one hind leg cocked, clearly content to be in this place where there is water and hay and the company of other horses. You leave her in the boy's care and duck your head under the low doorway of the small ger. The interior is dim and warm, the warmth coming from a small iron stove that glows faintly red at the base, its chimney pipe rising through the roof hole. The air smells of wool and wood smoke and a faint sweetness that you recognize as milky tea, the scent of boiled milk and salt, and the particular earthiness of the pressed tea leaves that travel the trade routes from the distant south. A thick felt mattress, wider than the one you slept on at the waystation, covers half the floor, and on it lies a heavy woolen blanket folded neatly at the foot. Beside the stove, a low wooden table holds a clay teapot with a chipped spout and a bowl that has been wiped clean. You sit down slowly on the felt mattress, feeling the soft thickness yield beneath you, and you let out a long breath that you did not realize you had been holding. The warmth of the stove seeps into your tired legs, a gentle heat that works its way through the wool of your trousers and into the muscles that have been clenched and released for 3 days of riding. You pull off your felt hat and set it aside, then loosen the sash at your waist and let your coat fall open, the cooler air of the ger touching your chest in a way that is refreshing and calming. The door flap rustles, and a woman steps inside, her movements quiet and efficient. She carries a clay bowl in both hands, and she sets it on the low table beside you without speaking. The bowl is filled with hot milky tea, its surface pale and steaming, and the salt scent rises to meet you. She nods once and withdraws, the door flap falling back into place, and you are alone again in the dim, warm space. You lift the bowl with both hands, feeling the heat spread through the rough clay into your palms, and you bring it to your lips. The tea is exactly the right temperature, hot but not scalding, and it tastes of salt and cream and a faint bitterness that is the signature of the pressed leaves. You drink slowly, letting each sip settle in your stomach, and the warmth of it spreads through your chest and down into your arms and fingers. It is the same salted tea you drank at the waystation, but it tastes different here, richer and more comforting, the taste of arrival rather than passage. While you drink, you let your eyes travel around the interior of the ger. The lattice walls are lined with felt that has been patched in several places, the patches sewn with careful even stitches in a darker thread. A small shelf holds a few simple items, a wooden comb, a coil of braided horsehair cord, a small leather pouch closed with a drawstring. The roof poles rise from the lattice to the central ring where the stovepipe exits. Their dark wood smooth from years of smoke and handling, and they create a pattern overhead that is both simple and beautiful, a radiating geometry that draws the eye upward and then releases it. The light from the door flap and from the small gaps around the stovepipe fills the space with a soft golden glow that shifts as the wind moves the smoke outside. You finish the tea and set the bowl down on the table, and then you lie back on the felt mattress, your head finding a hollow that seems made for it. The blanket is heavy and warm, and you pull it up to your chin, feeling the coarse wool press gently against your neck. The mattress supports your body in a way that the saddle and the hard ground could not, and your spine lengthens, the vertebrae settling one by one as the tension of the ride releases. Your legs, which have been bent in the saddle for so many hours, straighten fully, and you feel a deep, pleasant ache that is the body's way of thanking you for rest. Outside, the wind blows steadily, and you can hear it moving across the roof, felt with a low, continuous sound like a distant breath. The felt walls breathe with it, expanding slightly when a gust presses against them and then relaxing as the gust passes, a slow rhythm that matches your own breathing. You hear the horses in the corral, their occasional whicker and the stamp of a hoof on the hard earth, and you hear the quiet voices of people in the camp, a man speaking in a low tone and a woman answering, the words indistinguishable, but the cadence calm and unhurried. The boy laughs somewhere, a bright, brief sound, and then the silence returns. The light begins to drain from the sky outside, the golden glow at the door flap shifting to a deeper amber and then to a soft grey. The interior of the jar grows dimmer, the stove's glow becoming the brightest thing, a small red-orange ember that pulses gently with the drawer of the chimney. You watch it for a while, your eyelids growing heavy, and the light seems to pulse in time with your heart. A slow, steady rhythm that is the same rhythm the world has kept since the beginning. You think about the scroll case, now in the hands of the regional commander. You do not know what message it carried, what orders or reports or requests were sealed inside the leather cylinder, and you do not need to know. Your part in its journey is complete. The scroll has traveled across the vast grasslands through day and night, heat and fog, wind and stillness, and it has arrived where it needed to be. The network of riders and stations, the invisible web that stretches across the empire, has done its work quietly and efficiently, and you have been one small part of that work. The thought settles into you without pride or excitement, only a quiet sense of completion. You turn onto your side and pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders, the wool warm and heavy against your ear. The smell of the blanket is familiar now, the same smell of horse and dust and old smoke that has been your companion for 3 days, and it comforts you in a way that is difficult to explain. It is the smell of the journey, and the journey is over, and now the smell will fade and be replaced by other smells, the clean wool of this jar, the milky tea, the smoke of the stove. But for now it lingers, a reminder of the wide open spaces you have crossed. The wind outside shifts direction slightly, and you feel the change as a subtle pressure against the felt wall nearest your head. The wall pushes inward a fraction, and then releases, and the sound of the wind changes note, dropping a little lower. You hear the distant bark of a dog, a single short sound that is not a warning but simply a statement, and then the dog is silent. The horses have settled for the night, and the voices have stopped, and the camp is sliding into its own rest. The quiet routines of evening folding into the deeper quiet of the steppe at night. You close your eyes and let the warmth of the stove and the weight of the blanket hold you. Your breathing slows, matching the slow pulse of the ember in the stove, and your thoughts become soft and scattered, drifting away from the journey and toward whatever comes next. You do not know if you will carry another scroll tomorrow, or rest here for a day or two, or ride back across the same ridges and valleys toward the waystation where you began. None of that matters right now. Right now, there is only the warmth, the dim light, the soft sound of the wind, and the deep, settled quiet of a task completed. The last thing you are aware of before sleep comes is the feeling of the scroll case, no longer pressed against your thigh but still present in your mind, a ghost weight that will take a day or two to fade. The seal is unbroken, the message delivered, and the vast grasslands behind you are already settling into the silence from which they came. The steppe will continue to wait, as it always does, patient and still, holding its wide empty spaces under the stars, ready for the next rider, the next horse, the next scroll, the next journey through the calm and endless grass.